Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
Hello everyone, it's Jesse Green here. Welcome back to SavvyDentist.com and to the Savvy Dentist podcast. It is great to have you here where we bring you some of the very best of the Savvy Dentist podcast moments. Now, over the past 6 years, we've had the chance to interview and work with countless entrepreneurs, athletes, speakers, authors, and a heap of international experts, and really finding out what makes them tick, and in particular, how to take those lessons and apply them to dental practice. So in this episode, we're going to be talking all about inspiring leadership, because leadership is one of those intangible but really crucial skills that no one teaches us in dental school. And if we don't get this right, your practice will never grow to the next level. There's lots of famous leaders throughout history that we can learn from, and many different kinds of leaders that we can model as well. So if you want to lead your team, your practice, and of course yourself to success, here's the best bits of leadership on the Savvy Dentist podcast. Martin Moore was my guest in episode 320, and in this episode we spoke about leveling up your leadership, and in particular we dived in what a definition of leadership is according to Martin. And we spoke about why leadership and management become inseparable, how they interact with each other, but how they are intertwined with one another. And of course we spoke about some practical steps to becoming a great leader, whether it's leading yourself, leading a team, or developing other leaders. There's some great practical steps here. So let's get into it with Marty.
It's really hard to actually define what leadership is. It's much easier to say it's not this and it's not that. But fundamentally for me, leadership is about marshalling the resources that are given to you in your organisation, people, finance, assets and so forth, to get particular outcomes and to create value for your employer. That's it. Full stop, pure and simple. So your job as a leader is to find a way to use all of the things you've got to create value. Now, the crossover between leadership and management is a really interesting one, because I believe the two are actually inseparable. What a lot of people have been talking about over the last several years is managers are people who try and get results through making people do things, and leaders are higher order people, higher order thinkers, the benevolent, virtuous people who come in and motivate people and get them moving in the right direction. I think to be a great leader, you also have to be a good manager. And to be a good manager, you also have to be a great leader. I find the two quite inseparable. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit more, because you and I spoke just a little while ago about how you actually get the right level of oversight while still letting people be motivated to do what they do and without falling into that command and control mode, which is more likely associated with a manager. Let me just round this off by saying the ultimate question over red wine: are leaders born or made? I think some people have a greater propensity to leadership. They find it easier. It's more in their DNA. But anyone can become a leader, and anyone can become a really great leader if they take a few practical steps, because mostly it's about habits, discipline, and behaviours. And it's about self-mastery. And anyone can be on that path to self-mastery. And as a leader, the most important thing you can do is be in control of yourself and be the best you can be for your people.
In episode 202, Kate Russell joined me for a conversation about leaders who lead. And in this episode, she really unpacked the common mistakes that people make with their leadership and what to do to avoid them. So we spoke particularly around how making assumptions can sometimes lead to miscommunications, and then of course what happens then and how to fix it. So this is a really practical episode, and I hope you enjoy these insights from Kate Russell. Where do you think that leaders in small to medium enterprise typically come unstuck? Obviously, there's the lack of self-awareness, but where else do people make missteps in their leadership?
And I think it comes down to they think that people know what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So lots of assumptions, and they find it very difficult to communicate what they're thinking, what their vision is, how they perceive the business growing and where it's going to, what the roles and responsibilities are. I met with an accountant who was frustrated, and he said that he told the office that he was a relaxed employer and he wanted to have a relaxed environment, but he never defined what relaxed was. And then he complained that they came to work wearing jeans. you have to be able to communicate what you mean. Language means, I always say that language, particularly the word respect or other important words, is a bit like pizza. I can say the word pizza and we all know what a pizza is, but we all have a different image of what a pizza is, because to me, if it has pineapple on it, it's revolting. Whereas if it's,
I'm with you.
We all have a slightly different understanding of words. So you can't just use words and expect everybody to understand exactly what they mean.
Serial entrepreneur Rael Bricker joined me in episode 161, where we spoke about giving up control in order to get control. Now, Rael has got an incredible pedigree. He's got a couple of master's degree, an MBA, Master of Engineering, and many more academic qualifications. But what I really appreciate about Rael is his real-world application, because what we talk about in this episode are some of the reflections that he has while he worked for an underground mining company. So things literally learned at the coalface. And of course, we spoke about the benefits of showing respect to people, why that's so important, how to do it, and of course, what can go wrong if it doesn't occur. So some real-world, real-life examples of leadership in action, giving up control to get control with Rael Bricker. I hope you love this snippet.
What I learned about myself, I learned about myself that I knew I would never be absolutely tied to the hierarchy. I had far too much ambition to sit and wait for my promotions. But I also learned that if you just treated people with respect and you didn't show disdain to people and you were prepared to help them when they were doing something wrong, they would show you the same respect. And as I was 22 at the time, or 21 when I started there, and a lot of the staff there had been there for 10 or 15 or 20 years before. And by admitting that you don't know something is not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of humanity. And if you admit that you don't know something and you ask people for help, they're happy to help you.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people feel that they have to show their boss, the ego gets in the way, and then they don't do the right thing.
In episode 172, Scott Stein joined me for a discussion about leadership hacks for dental practice owners. And really, the whole premise of this conversation was that we're living in a fast-paced world, so we needed fast-paced solutions. And we discussed the essential elements of great leadership, and particularly what separates what great leaders from an average leader. So how do you become great? How do you know if you're great? How do you know if you're average? And really what's got emphasized in this particular podcast was the importance of taking time to recharge so that we can make smarter decisions, because one of our roles as a leader is to make great decisions consistently, day in, day out. So let's get into it with Scott.
Yeah, I think there's really three main things that separate a great leader from a really average leader. And one of them is around the awareness that they have around these three things. The first one is their mindset. I notice, and I've worked with many great leaders, either of ASX 100 or even small businesses and practices, where there's the one person like a dentist or somebody else that's running the business. And regardless, one of the things I notice is what's going on with their mindset. And is their mindset positive, supportive, looking for opportunities? Or is their mindset one of overwhelm, of dread, and just struggling mentally just to keep up with everything? And I think that's one of the key ingredients. Some of the great leaders actually keep a positive, focused mindset. They take time to recharge their batteries, which means they can make smarter decisions.
Rohan Dredge joined me for a conversation about how to be a better leader in episode 178. Now, Rohan is one of the smartest guys I know in the leadership field. On top of being a really great leader himself, he's a really great teacher and a really good guy. And in this conversation, we spoke about how it's the practice owner's job to realize and fulfill not only their own potential, but the potential of other people on their team. And of course, really, if we want to grow and scale our own practice, we have to grow and build people in the process. We need to develop people, and that becomes our role. So, of course, we spoke about that in the context of shaping your preferred future and how to go about doing that in a practical and systematic way. Lots of great stuff in this conversation. Here's Rohan. Let's unpack the how part a little bit, mate, because again, we spoke about having a plan. What do you want? And you've got a lot of thoughts around making sure you've got clarity and conviction and some energy around that. So what are the steps that people might want to think about as they go forward in this direction? What needs to happen next?
It's a really important way of thinking this through. And I think in shapes, Jesse. So if the people that are listening to this conversation at the moment, I want you to imagine a triangle. And again, these things are useful until they're not. But if you're thinking about a triangle right now, the bottom baseline of the triangle is your first job as a leader is to realize potential. And if I unpack that briefly, that is to be able to become the best version of yourself that you can, but also remember that you've been given the responsibility of other people realizing their potential. One of the phrases that my wife and I use with our 2 young children is, we aren't raising children, we're raising adults that are currently children. And so we think that through with the lens. And so right now, as of the moment of this conversation, we're right in the middle of a finance conversation because my 7-year-old son is, how do I get more money? And you would love this as a dentist. His current plan is, I lose my baby teeth and the tooth fairy is unusually generous. And so that's his plan. But we're actually building something into them that they will use in the future. So the bottom of the triangle is realize potential. The left-hand side of the triangle, as it goes up to the top, is activate others. And this is the key to thinking about how to scale and build and include other people in your practice. It's looking at what people, the way I say it is, what would you do for free? What bubbles up inside you that you are so passionate about, that you are wired to do, that you cannot wait? Or is it just a job? Now, if it's just a job and you rock in a few minutes late, you take your full hour for lunch, you go home a few minutes early, that's the worldview and the responsibility of the individual. But if it's somebody that you've tapped into a passion, you can switch that on for somebody really, really quick. The third part is, and if you imagine the other side of the triangle, is to shape a preferred future. So your job as a practice owner, your job as a raiser up of a team, your job as a realizer of vision and potential is to realize potential, yours and others, activate others, get people doing things they're passionate about, and then shape a preferred future and say, I'd love to be able to have multiple practices. I'd love to be able to have the time, the finance, the flexibility that I'm looking for. And the place that you start, again, this is why the shape's important. So I'd be saying, if you're driving and listening to this, if you're walking and listening to this, what have you got to do differently on the bottom part of the triangle? Who can you have a purposeful conversation with about, hey, is there anything more that you could be inspired by? What's the currency that you love to be recognized with? And then be inviting people in to be creating the future, not just doing a job.
Anyone in business understands that one of the keys to success in business is mastering your inner game. And I was joined by Catherine Plano in episode 144 when we discussed just that and how to become a great leader. And so Catherine was really passionate about discussing the importance of doing the deep work, the internal work before we go into a business, and then how to keep doing that deep work. And that led to a conversation about the common mistake business owners make when it comes to setting goals and achieving goals. Lots of great practical information from Catherine here. Really important to understand the focus of mastering ourselves before we can master our business. And I think there's some key messages in here for all business owners. I hope you enjoy it. Catherine, in that context of thinking about business growth and the personal growth being the forerunner to business growth, what are the common mistakes or missteps that you see business owners, entrepreneurs make in terms of trying to set a goal and then perhaps some of these things like biases or self-sabotage coming up? What are the common mistakes in all of that?
Yeah, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs that I work with go into business with an idea. And that idea is their goal. So they then set up this business and they've got just this end in mind, which is fine. Absolutely. Goals help you get to where you need to get to. But I always say it's the journey. So sometimes, I truly believe that's why you hear that these stats like businesses don't last 12 months. They go into a business without doing the deep work first. And I find that a lot of entrepreneurs and business owners that I work with, they'll say things like, I want more customers, I want more money, I want more exposure, all of that kind of stuff. And it's okay to be focused on the external, and they start comparing themselves with others and how is it that others, but the ones that are successful are the ones that have done the deep work.
My final guest in this series is Ronan Lutman, and Ronan is the head coach here at Savvy Dentist, and he has an incredible pedigree when it comes to emotional intelligence and how to use it to become a better leader. So in this conversation, we really unpacked what emotional intelligence is, what are the components of emotional intelligence, and particularly we had a conversation about the importance of understanding our own EQ as we navigate our communication and behaviour styles, as well as the communication and behaviour styles of other people as well. So if we want to take our practice to the next level, we need to take our leadership to the next level. And if we want to take our leadership to the next level, we need to have that self-awareness about emotional intelligence, how we interact with ourselves and how we interact with others. You're going to absolutely love this episode. Let's get into it.
So EQ from a crude definition perspective is the ability for individuals to recognize their own emotions and those of others, and use this information to successfully navigate communication and behavior between whoever you're communicating with. So the key components are self and others. Traditionally, as I said over the years, when I've asked people what their understanding of EQ is, we're going to go on this fun journey dialogue and explore you. Most people say it's about me. And they're right. That's the first part of the definition, is understanding my own internal world. But the key is then, because if you're on an island on your own, your EQ doesn't matter.
No.
It matters to your own sanity, but there's no one else to share it with and engage with. So the other key component is and others. And that's where it opens up.
Be sure to stay tuned for more best of moments and to learn from the wisdom of our many incredible guests. We drop our podcast episodes weekly into our Facebook group, so be sure to join if you want to stay up to date with our latest resources, announcements, and content. You can join our free Facebook group at Savvy Dentist on Facebook. Just search it there, and we look forward to seeing you in the group.